if you're on my email newsletter, if you're not, you should be. But I give away a free ebook, which is about drilling and jiu-jitsu. And sort of, if you read through that, this kind of idea is what I personally consider my own sort of jiu-jitsu training philosophy, is what I consider active drilling. So there's like passive drilling where you're just repping techniques out over and over again. But as the spectrum kind of moves towards effectiveness, one of the things that I think is really useful is to get to a point of active drilling, which is basically where you're doing a technique against someone that's resisting. I'm still drilling a technique, I'm still doing it, but I'm doing it against an active person. And in wrestling, for instance, wrestling, like when we would drill, drilling didn't mean that we were just doing it passively. We might do drills where one person's trying to escape and one person's trying to hold them down. And that would be an actual drill, but we're going full speed. But it was a drill. Drill doesn't mean that you have to just do it like with nothing, right? And so, that idea of having active drilling as a part of your training is really useful. And I'll agree with that. Like, I think it's one of the more, especially once you're at a certain level, it's really hard to do this in the beginning. Like if you're a brand new white belt, it's hard to drill like this because of the fact that you don't have a skill buffer. But the better and better you get at jiu-jitsu, you have this buffer of skill where you're far better than the people sometimes that you're rolling with. And when you're with those people, that is a great opportunity to do the techniques that you're trying to work on over and over and over again. And then again, if you read that newsletter that I sent out in the vault, the second thing that I would mention from it is that his game is small. Like Bernardo said that he didn't have a ton of techniques. He would talk, he just said he would have a handful of techniques that he'd use. I remember Roger Gracie was doing an interview a while ago, or he was actually doing a talk at a gym. And in the talk, he said that he can count on two hands how many techniques he's mastered, right? Two hands, and he's probably got a couple fingers left. So one of the best dudes in the world, like Roger Gracie is by far one of the legends. Bernardo Frey is the same way, one of the legends of jiu-jitsu. They have a small game. And then yet people think that they need to somehow have this massive game to be good, right? Again, you're going to know a lot, and even Roger said this in the video. He's like, I know a lot of moves. I know a ton of stuff. But my best stuff, when push comes to shove, it's these handful of techniques. And so for you, again, it's the same thing. And so you're going to have a handful of techniques, and one of the best ways to make those techniques sharper is to focus on them during rolling. And again, you can kind of get a form of active drilling where instead of stepping on the mat and having no focus, you focus on just hitting that one technique over and over and over again. And again, I thought that was a useful training tip from Bernardo, and I figured it would be useful for you guys because I know right now some people are coming back from the lockdown, some people are still in the lockdown, and everybody's training is a little bit more limited than it used to be. And so with that, you don't necessarily have a ton of time to drill, a ton of training partners. So having a focus when you step on the mat is really important. So being able to focus in on whatever it is that you're doing and focus in on that particular technique or whatever it is that you're trying to use would be a good idea. So if you don't have drilling partners, or if you don't have the time to drill, just rolling with people and going for the same techniques over and over and over again can be a really valuable way of training because you're going to sharpen those weapons up. And again, it has a lot of the same benefits of drilling where you just get that muscle memory. And in fact, I think that's it's kind of a more effective way to do it. And lastly, I'll sort of throw in my own experience with it. That's what I had to do a lot of. Like for me, for instance, during a time period where I was a black belt and really I only had blue belts to train with, I had to work on my game plan, work on my techniques over and over and over again because my skill was much better. And so I would purposely do things, purposely go for techniques, purposely create scrambles, purposely put myself in bad situations that I needed to get better at, whatever it might be. And then, especially when techniques get closer or competitions get closer, that's when I'll start to drill more. So for instance, 2 weeks before competition, that's where I'll start to probably my training, actual hard training is going to drop. I'm not going to train all that hard, and my drilling is going to go way up, and basically just get that muscle memory, because this way when I step on the mat, I'm not thinking, I'm just going off of muscle memory. And then during that time period where I'm drilling more and rolling less, my body's going to be more recovered. So when the competition comes, I'm going to be ready to go. One of the guys right now is getting ready to do a competition in Alabama. And he always fights me on this. I told him last night because he's competing on Friday.
So it's the PGF, right?
Yeah, PGF, Brandon McGaffron's
and that's every week?
Every week for 7 weeks. 7 more weeks.
7 more weeks,
yeah.
Wow, okay.
And so I told him, I said, look, he's competing on Friday. I was like, listen, just don't roll Wednesday and Thursday. Drill, but don't roll. And he has such a hard time doing it because he just likes training. But I'm like, I promise you, by Friday, you're going to be recovered. You're going to be rested. and you're going to be ready to go. You're going to be wanting to be out there rolling. You're going to be wanting to compete. You're going to be wanting to do that. Whereas if you train your tail off all week long, then by the time it comes, you're going to be like, I'm so tired. And so again, just an idea for you guys. So if you're trying to get some drilling in, drilling doesn't have to be just simply repetition after repetition after repetition. It can also be rolling with situational style rolling. It can be rolling where you just have a goal that you're after. You're still going to be focused in on it. And then again, that's why that little ebook that I give away when people sign up for my newsletter, I call it Focus Jiu-Jitsu, because really that's what it's about, right? If you're trying to make your jiu-jitsu better, it's important to have a focus from time to time. You don't have to do it all the time because, again, like one of the things that I dislike about competitions is my game becomes very boring. The way that I roll becomes boring. There's not a lot of play anymore because I'm focused on a particular game plan.
You're not experimenting, so to speak, pretty much.
Yeah, but whenever I'm not trained, like whenever I'm not really focused on something in particular, it's a lot more play, which is fun. But there's a time where if you want to get better, you've got to focus in on something. And like Bernard was saying, having a goal in mind and stepping on the mat and just simply trying to work those techniques is really, really valuable. And I think it'd be useful to you guys. And so I wanted to bring it up with you guys. I put it in the vault this month, and I figured it'd be worth talking about in the podcast.